Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We are reading again this evening, as we do every evening, from Sri Guru and His Grace by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj. Today's chapter is chapter 10, I believe, Instructing Spiritual Masters, otherwise known as Shiksha Gurus. Devotee, can you explain how the principle of disciplic succession works? I was under the impression that in your teaching there must be an unbroken chain of disciplic succession, beginning with God Himself, in order for the knowledge to be properly understood. But when I read Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, I found that the disciplic succession contained only 38 names, although it says that the system is 50 centuries old. Is this a complete list, or are some names left out? How are we to understand these apparent historical discrepancies? Srila Sridhar Maharaj, our Guru Parampara, disciplic succession, follows the ideal, not the body. It is a succession of instructing spiritual masters, not formal initiating spiritual masters. In a song about our Guru Parampara, written by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, it is mentioned, Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahe Anna Rupanuga Janera Jivana. The highest truth of Krishna consciousness comes down through the channel of Shiksha Gurus, instructing spiritual masters. Those who have the standard of realization in the proper line have been accepted in the list of our disciplic succession. It is not a Diksha Guru Parampara, a succession of formal initiating gurus. Diksha, or initiation, is more or less a formal thing. The substantial thing is Shiksha, or spiritual instruction. And if our Shiksha and Diksha Gurus, or instructing and initiating spiritual masters, are congruent, then we are most fortunate. There are different gradations of spiritual masters. In the scriptures, the symptoms of the Guru are the symptoms of the disciple have been described. The Guru must be qualified in so many ways, and the disciple must also be qualified. Then, when they come in connection, the desired result will be produced. We are concerned with Krishna consciousness wherever it is available. In the Bhagavad Gita, and especially in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna says, I start the Krishna consciousness movement, but gradually, by the enervating influence of the material world, it weakens. When I find that it has been diminished considerably, I return and begin a fresh movement. Again, when I find that it is becoming degraded by the adverse influence of the environment, I send one of my representatives to clear the path and give some fresh energy, invest some fresh capital in my Krishna consciousness movement. In this regard, it's worthy of consideration to not be too attached to an institution for institution's sake. An institution serves as a vehicle to convey spiritual substance. And if the vehicle breaks down and is beyond repair, then why shed tears over something that is essentially a vehicle without inherent spiritual substance? Not that the institution is disrespected, but that the institution is of relative value, whereas the substance that the institution is to convey is of absolute value. And the absolute will always trump the relative if a decision has to be made as to which to prioritize. What is Krishna consciousness? We must examine the standard of knowledge. The Guru should try to impart to his disciple the capacity of reading what Krishna consciousness really is. Krishna consciousness is not a trade. It is not anybody's monopoly. The sincere souls must thank their lucky stars that they can appreciate what Krishna consciousness is, wherever it may be. Devotee, how are we to understand that in the history of our disciplic succession, it appears that there are gaps where there was no initiating guru present to formally accept disciples? Spiritual light years. Srila Sridhar Maharaj. We are not concerned with a material connection. The mediator is not this flesh and body as we generally think. In studying the development of scientific thought, we may connect Newton to Einstein, leaving aside many unimportant scientists. We may trace the development of science from Galileo to Newton and then to Einstein, neglecting the middle points. If their contributions are taken into account, then the whole thing is taken into account, and lesser scientists may be omitted. When a long distance is to be surveyed, the nearest posts may be neglected. Between one planet and another, the unit of measurement is the light year. Distance is calculated in light years and not from mile to mile or meter to meter. In the disciplic succession, only the great stalwarts in our line are considered important. So Guru Maharaj is making the point that the parampara is spanning a colossal distance, a colossal subjective distance, one may say, between the status and the state and the circumstance of a conditioned jiva soul and that of a siddha or a perfected jiva soul, a devotee who has achieved the goal of spiritual practice. It's a long distance in between, and the parampara traverses that distance, and in order to delineate and span that distance, a unit of measurement that is appropriate is to be applied, and thus the essential, or as Guru Maharaj says, the great stalwarts in our line are considered important, and thus they are listed in the parampara, but not necessarily all the smaller connecting personalities in between that make up the chain. Devotee, there was one question still in my mind on Guru Parampara which was not clarified. Between Baladev Vidyabhushan and Jagannath Das Babaji is a gap of almost 100 years. How is it that between the two of them, no one is listed in our Guru Parampara? Srila Sridhar Maharaj, we have to forget material considerations when we consider the spiritual line. Here in this plane, the spiritual current is always being disturbed and interrupted by material obstructions. Whenever the truth is interrupted by a material flow and becomes mixed or tampered with, Krishna appears to again reinstate the truth in its former position of purity. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. That attempt is always being made by the Lord and his devotees. The flow of spiritual truth is a living thing, not a dead thing. The vigilant eye of the Lord is always over our heads, and whenever it is necessary to keep the current pure and flowing in full force, help descends from above. Krishna says to Arjuna, "What I say to you today, I spoke to Vivishvan many, many years ago. Now, by the influence of material conception, that very truth has become contaminated, and so again I say the same thing to you today." Religious mutations. Here in the material world, the material consideration is always tampering with the spiritual current. The purity of truth is always being disturbed. So sometimes Krishna has to come himself, and sometimes he sends his personal representative to again re-establish the truth in its former and pure state. When the truth is sufficiently covered, disturbed, and mutilated by the influence of Maya, the illusory energy, then an attempt is made by the devotees of the Lord, or by the Lord himself, to rejuvenate it and to return it to the previous standard of purity. We cannot expect truth to continue here in this world of misunderstanding without any tampering or interruption. It is not possible. The intelligent will understand how to apply these principles practically. Suppose we are writing a history. We will note the main figures in the history, set aside those who are not so qualified, and begin the dynasty in order of their importance. Those who are negligible will not be mentioned. In a similar way, those who are really thirsty for spiritual truth like to see the line of pure spiritual heritage. They search out where it is to be found, connect the dynasty of stalwart teachers together, and say, "This is our line." The disciplic succession is not a bodily succession. Sometimes it is present and sometimes it is lost, and only appears again after 2 or 3 generations, just as with Prahlad Maharaj. He was a great devotee, but his son was a demon, and then again his grandson was a devotee. Even in the physical line we see such interruptions. In the spiritual line we may also see the channel of truth affected by the influence of Maya or misconception. So the experts will seek out the important personages in the line. Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, and Einstein. Suppose a scientist researches some truth. After a few generations, another scientist comes and takes up that thread and continues his research. Then, after a few more generations, another comes and takes up that thread and goes on. If we are to understand the real channel through which the particular research is progressing, we will have to study the important thinkers who helped bring it out. We see that Copernicus has contributed something before Galileo began. Then Newton came. Then there may be a gap for some time, and from Newton we find that Einstein took it up. In this way, there may be a gap, but still that thread is continued. An intelligent man will see that it began with a particular person, and then it came to another, and then came here. That will be the proper line of research. So in the spiritual line, this also holds true. Those who cannot understand this simple point are guided by physical considerations. They do not understand what is real spiritual truth. For them, the physical continuation is the Guru Parampara. But those who have their spiritual eyes awakened say, "No, what was there in the first Acharya is not found in the second or the third." But again we find the same standard of purity in the fourth Acharya. The Gaudiya Sampradaya of Mahaprabhu is one, and whoever contributes to that real line will be accepted. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan's contribution to the Sampradaya is no less important than that of other great stalwarts. Great stalwarts in the line. He may be a member of another line, the Madhva Sampradaya, in the physical sense, but his contribution, especially in attracting people to Gaudiya Vaishnavism with his commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, cannot be neglected by the students of posterity. So his contribution has been utilized by our acharyas, considering the degree, the essence, and the purity of his thought in our spiritual line. Shastra Guru, Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru, and Nam Guru are all taken together. In this way, a real channel has been given to save us, to keep up the flow of the highest truth from that world to this world. This policy has been adopted by the acharyas. Wherever we have found any contribution, that is, by the will of Krishna, the highest contribution to the line, we have accepted it. So we accept Shastra Guru, Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru, Mantra Guru, Nam Guru. We accept them all as our Guru. We give respect to Ramanuja, who is the head of another school of Vaishnavas, but we do not give respect to a Sahajya, an imitationist, who is in the line of Mahaprabhu only in the physical sense, but who is mutilating and tampering with the real teachings of Mahaprabhu. The imitationists are not considered, although in a physical sense they are in the line of Mahaprabhu and Rupa and Sanatan. When we go to judge the very spirit of the line, we see that they are nowhere. Their connection with Mahaprabhu is only a physical imitation. On the other hand, we find that Ramanuja has made a substantial contribution to Vaishnavism. Madhva Acharya has given a sufficient contribution to Vaishnavism. And Nimbarka has also made his contribution. So we accept them according to our necessity. But we reject the physical, so-called current keepers, because what is found there is all mutilated and tampered with. There is a proverb, which is more useful, the nose or the breath? The intelligent will say that the breath is more essential than the nose. To sustain the life, the nose may be cut off, but if the breath continues, one may live. We consider the breath to have more importance than the nose. The physical form will misguide people to go away from the truth and follow a different direction. We don't consider the body connection important in the acharyaship. It is a spiritual current and not a body current. We may see the same principle being described here, applicable to other areas of life, if one is focusing on or attributing excessive value, disproportionate value to the physical dimension, then that will invariably be a temporary relationship with whatever that is, whatever object that the person is attributing value to. The relationship with that object will inevitably, invariably be temporary, because the physical world is constantly in a state of flux. So there's no longevity to whatever object one attempts to cherish or develop some kind of meaningful interaction or relationship with. It's bound to lead to disappointment, because there's no inherent sat or longevity or truth, eternality in the physical dimension. And we can see this even in practical examples like relationships that are based on, where there's too much emphasis on physical attraction between the couple. Then there's some magnetic pull at first and some stimulation, some enjoyment at first, but it will inevitably fizzle out. And in fact, quite often the opposite is produced, so there's some kind of acrimonious separation, or quite possibly a disillusionment, or what have you. So the subtler vibration one can tap into when attempting to create a connection with something else, then the greater value and longevity it will have. Because the subtler something is, the closer it is to the plane of the soul. So again, back to the example of a relationship. If the relationship also has a strong content of mental attraction and compatibility, then it's going to last a lot longer, because it's a connection based on a subtler dimension, and that is closer to the soul. So the closer something is to the soul, the greater it will be satisfying, and the greater its satisfaction potential, and the longer the greater its longevity as well. And so this applies to our understanding and comprehension, our conception of the Guru Parampara. If it's based on the physical, then it's bound to be temporary and disappointing. So the closer our conception of the Guru Parampara is to the truth, the sat of the spiritual dimension, then the truer it will be, the more satisfying and fulfilling and fruitful it will be. Where are we? The disciple of a true devotee may even be a non-devotee. We admit that because we see it. And the Lord himself says it in Bhagavad Gita, Sakalane ha mahata yogo nashta parantapa, Bhagavad Gita 4.2. The current is damaged by the influence of this material world. In the line, some are affected, go astray, and may even become non-devotees. So the continuation through the physical succession is not a safe criterion to be accepted. We must trace only the current of spiritual knowledge. Wherever we can get that, we must accept it, even if it comes from the Ramanuja, Madhva, or Nimbarka Sampradaya. As much as we get from them substantially, we accept, and we reject the so-called followers of our own tradition if they are mere imitationists. The son of a political leader may not be a political leader. A political leader may also have a political succession, and his own son, although brought up in a favorable environment, may be rejected. A doctor's son may not be a doctor. In the disciplic order also, we admit the possibility that they may not all come up to the same standard. Those who do not should be rejected. And if the truth is found in a substantial way somewhere else, that should be accepted. Wherever there is devotion and the correct consideration about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, our Guru is there. Who is our Guru? He is not to be found in the physical form. Our Guru is to be traced wherever we find the embodiment of the pure thought and understanding which Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu imparted to save us. Baladev Vidyabhushan was very akin to the Madhva Sampradaya, but when he came in connection with Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he showed great interest in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. He has also commented on the Srimad Bhagavatam and Jiva Goswami's Sat Sandarbha. That enlightened thought is a valuable contribution to our Sampradaya. We cannot dismiss him. He is our Guru. At the same time, if my own relatives do not give recognition to my Guru or to the service of Mahaprabhu, I must eliminate them. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada has explained the Shiksha Guru Parampara in this way. Wherever we find the extraordinary line of the flow of love of God and support for the same, we must bow down. That line may appear in a zigzag way, but still, that is the line of my Gurudev. In this way, it is accepted. We want the substance, not the form. This is quite a long chapter, so perhaps we can interrupt it here, and then we can continue with it tomorrow. Maybe halfway through. Maybe. Any questions or comments or anything else? No? He says the line may appear in a zigzag way. It's not necessarily predictable based on physical lineage of any kind. Cannot be traced using that approach, methodology. Of course, there is some qualification needed to trace the flow, the true descent of spiritual substance. It's not as if we are simply obeying the dictates of whimsicality when we go to try and trace this zigzag line, because that can lead to dangerous decisions. So one must first be able to sniff out, so to speak, the proper spiritual substance, or I should say recognize the proper spiritual substance before they start trying to recognize any zigzag line. Otherwise one is simply obeying the decisions of one's mind, and that is unsubstantial and potentially very misleading premise to base one's such important decisions upon. So, first of all, rather than maybe trying to figure out if the line is zigzag or not, one should develop qualities of dedication and sincerity and loyalty. And through such qualities, then purity will develop, and through the purity one will be able to recognize one's spiritual masters, the ethos, the essence of the teachings of one's spiritual master, wherever they may appear, in whatever form they may take, whenever and wherever they choose to come to the surface. Then one who has purified himself can recognize that. So first comes a certain amount of qualification, not that one jumps from guru to guru or teacher to teacher before they have, following some kind of intellectual or emotional dictate. So we can finish it there. We can continue tomorrow for the rest of the chapter. Jai Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Gurudev Ki Jai. Who's singing? You're singing. Hare Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Hare Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudana. Gopala Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudana. Giridhari Gopinath Jai Gosai Gauri
Shri Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki
Jai.
Om Vishnupad Shri Srila Bhakti Rakshakshitha Dev Goswami Maharaj ki
Jai.
Harinam Sankirtan ki
Jai.
Nitai Gaura Premanande
Hari Bol. Hari Bol.